to another episode of MUSE On The Mic. I'm Riley.
And I'm Emily. I'm so glad you guys have all joined us again. We are here on episode 5 and excited to jump into today's topics. Before we do that, we want everyone to like, subscribe, follow us on social media, share with all your friends, and join us on Patreon, where we are going to be starting off dropping some very spicy and extended episodes, some added details, maybe some short little ones too, just for fun for you guys on Patreon. So, Riley, here we go again.
It's another big one.
Another big one, another heavy story, and another whole conversation about privacy and anonymity. But before we jump into that, I wanted to refresh your mind on one of our funnier stories, and kind of ties in to before we were outed or doxxed, and we were just kind of establishing the fact that we were going to be a little bit brazen in our advertising styles. So I want to take your memory back to our very first trade show. For those that are watching now, Riley and I own a body rub parlor, a happy ending massage parlor in Toronto. And in Toronto, they have a trade show called the Everything to Do with Sex Show that is obviously about everything sexy. There's everything from swingers clubs and us and toy companies and fish dungeon-y stuff and lingerie and like you name it, if it's sexy, it's at the show. And of course, Muse had to have a booth because we're Muse and we deserve to be everywhere. But this is before we, as a little duo, had ever spoken publicly about our business. So we go and invest all this money for our booth. Do you remember our very first booth, Riley?
I do. And I remember even back then we didn't have help. So it was like, we're doing setup, we're doing tear down, we're working the show. We're not in a position to hire people. So it was a lot on our plates. It was a busy weekend.
I remember like sweating to death, setting up all that stuff, the furniture and the banners. We didn't know how to hang a banner, where the spotlights go, and all this stuff. And I feel like as soon as the show doors opened, we both froze. We looked at each other. We're like, we don't know what to say to people. What do we say?
Well, if I remember correctly, we took a lot of comfort in the fact that there was a bar.
Yeah.
So we got a little liquid courage and kind of got our flow going and like loosened up a bit.
Remember the very first evening of the show. So it goes Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So it was Friday evening, definitely a couple glasses of wine in. And I saw someone that I recognized. I remember it specifically. It was my landlord at the time and his wife.
Yes, yeah.
My response was to immediately dive under the table. I'm petrified. This man thought I did something else for a living based on my rental application.
Right.
I was thrilled that they were there because clearly I have a cool landlord. But at the same time, I was like, oh my God, hide now. Like my instinct was just duck. There was like shots fired and I just literally barreled under that table and would not come out. We were just like, what the fuck do I do? What do we do?
I don't know if you remember, it just dawned on me as you were saying this. I remember meeting someone or seeing someone I knew from my personal life as well. I don't know if it must have been the first year, but it was my dentist. And I remember being like, he can't see me. Like, I mean, he cleans my parents' teeth too. Like, I just have to hide. Like, it was so mortifying. We just didn't have that comfort yet. So we were kind of hiding at, anytime we thought we saw someone we knew.
Oh, we were so green and so virginal at that time, trying to be these brazy, bold people. And here we were like, just freaking out. Needless to say, that was a very drunk weekend and probably kind of wasted some of the investment because we definitely weren't in like top tier mode at that point.
Yeah.
It was really shaky. And so here we are now, just fully out there. And thanks to, our competitors and the story on episode 4 about your outing. And here we go diving into mine.
You
The
ready for this?
contrast of those two eras is just like wild to me.
Yeah.
Am I ready? I'm nervous. All these stories make me nervous, but this one is really obviously close to home, personal, scary, and has led to so many other turns of events, both good and bad, in my life since, and both personal and professional, right?
I think this is going to be a Emily heavy episode. So I'm just going to listen in and have a tea. Or is it tea?
It's tea for today. It is my Pinot Grigio tea. Another deep breath. Okay. So, a bit of context for everybody watching on how this all came about. In our industry, we have review websites, just like you have TripAdvisor or Yelp reviews or Google reviews. Leave us a great Google review. Either which way, there are also kind of more casual, kind of underground, not quite dark web, but like lesser known websites that also host review platforms and forums of all sorts. And at that time in our professional ownership careers, and a little bit further back into the tail end of my massage career, there was a particular website. I'm just going to call it by its initials because it's no longer in existence. No one needs to know anything about it. It's a horrible place. But it was called MT. Those are the initials I'm just going to roll with for today. MT was a really toxic site. It was very freeform, very unmoderated. You didn't have to have a membership or register under any sort of confirming account. You didn't have to sign in through Google or attach to your Facebook page or anything like that. So everybody's thing was like guest or anonymous posted this and anonymous commented that. And there was a particular girl who used to work in the industry that really disliked me in particular. I've always been very vocal and very prolific on the forums. And I would definitely bend some of the rules on the forums back then too. Ladies weren't really supposed to be posting. It was very much a boys' locker room. And I was like, F that.
I want to
Go in there and
join.
tell some stories, right? Do you remember I did some client reviews from way back in
I
my
do.
career?
I do. And it was so controversial because it's been set up for clients to review ladies, and you were like, hell no, I want to play.
Oh, I want
And
to play too.
clients.
It definitely stirred feathers. But the ownership of one of the main and positive review boards was very supportive of me taking that kind of stance. And I had some rules. I wasn't allowed to like say who I was or advertise. It was very incognito and like anonymous. I'm just some mystery girl in the industry. But it drew a lot of controversy, a lot of attention. There was definitely a top girl in the industry at the time, and she did not like the attention that I was, I guess, taking from her or causing on the boards to the point people were talking about it. And I became a target, not just a target of hers, but her harem, her collection of gentlemen, her white knights came out in full force in attack mode for me. And at that time, a few smaller review boards had popped up, kind of like just startup type of vibe. And one of them in particular, I was always a little suspicious of. They seemed to always know a little too much, never said who they were that was actually behind it, always claimed, like, we've met before, you know who I am, you can trust me, those kinds of things. And slowly the anxiety really started building into what was occurring on this MT website. And it definitely wasn't me. There was other sections, for strippers, for escorts, for all different sectors of the adult industry, and people were being attacked everywhere. But if you went in the massage section, if the front page had 15 threads, 13 to 14 of them were about Muse, me, us, just all the shit talking. It was slanderous. It was vile at times. It was definitely filled with fake news and made up stories and characters and players that never even happened, never existed, things that never really occurred. And once in a while, this other website's moderators that I didn't really trust too much would pop in with a little bit of information as if they could look on the back end of that website. Now, the owner of the MT Bad website was totally a jerk. He loved the premise of his website being such a shit disturber. And what he really wanted to do was to kind of copy websites like The Dirty and stuff where you already have celebrity slander, where just anyone could go post something, out somebody about something, call people out on things, expose celebrity cheaters, that kind of vibe. It was literally like, whatever you want to say, you can say it. And the more drama it caused, the happier he was, the more views he got, the more money he made off this website, right? I remember one particular day, this website caused me so much like anxiety, which was a very new feeling to me, where I found myself constantly on my laptop, just refresh, refresh, refresh all day long, freaking out about things that were posted about us, about our business. And there was one fateful day where I logged in and saw that somebody had posted my full identity. My first name, last name, three different photos of me, my home address, and started into some of my family's information as well. And I don't really have descriptive words for the feeling of panic and like absolute horror that kind of fell into me in that moment. It was probably about 6 months or so before you were outed in the Toronto Sun, and so neither of us had any experience with this, and
Yeah.
it felt so on an island, just like isolating, terrifying. I was so upset. I was so scared. And it actually, most people don't know this except you and a few besties, including our editor. Hey girl. It caused me social anxiety, which I had never had before. Um, and still to this day affects my life in a very drastic and dramatic way. And I know that always seems kind of contradictory based on our life and that I have a second identity. And people are like, well, why can't you just go into work mode and not be anxious? And I'm like, what does that mean? And
Yeah.
I know, Riley, for you, it's not until the past like few years that you've actually had personal experience with anxiety and stuff too. But it threw you and your life and your daily responsibilities into a bit of chaos as well, because here I was starting to freak out about things that would normally be
Mhm.
very easy, meetings,
Yeah.
phone calls, cold calling for advertising or following up with even some of our staff sometimes. Like we had so many trust issues after that, and through that whole phase discovered that there was clients coming to snoop on things and girls applying for jobs at the beck and call of another spa to come in and find out information. And so I just went full paranoid about everything,
Yeah,
and it
I think you really sparked like the distrust for everyone. I mean, could it be, the guy picking up our garbage, going through it? Could it be the new staff member? Is she working for someone else? And I think it even became a little bit obsessive, rightfully so, for you to check these boards to see like what's being said now. What do I have to catch? Can I get it removed? And it was really crippling at one time. And I think having a partnership, luckily, we can pick up each other's slack at different times. We have, but it was the first time I think that, you're such a rock in our relationship that you were really, crumbled, and it affected life. And I hope you don't mind me telling this story. I remember even um, driving together. This kind of opens another can of worms that we're not getting into, but driving to meet another owner and you being so riddled with anxiety that I had to stop the car for you to throw up. Do you remember?
I do remember
I'm
that.
sorry if you don't want me to share that.
Oh no, it's
Um,
okay. Shit happens.
but I mean, it really rocked you, and it took a bit, rightfully so.
I completely forgot about that one, but it's true. My anxiety causes me to throw up. It causes no nosebleeds. I shake, I sweat, I tremble, and I chicken out from a lot of things. Um, and sometimes on a good day, I can like do a couple breathing exercises or like pep talk myself and just buckle down and get through it. And other days, it absolutely cripples my entire day. It also triggered the most extreme insomnia I've ever had. Now, I already had insomnia from some other traumatic shit in my younger years. Um, but a lot of these posts, because it was anonymous, you would basically submit a post and then at witching hours, the moderators would approve, 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 approve. So all those posts would go up at 2, 3, 4 in the morning. And every time I tried to DM the moderators and ask for my photo and my address to be taken down, the response was F you with laughing emojis. This guy just really enjoyed that kind of chaos. And I found I could not sleep because bad things happened at night and it really just messed with my head. To this day, I still struggle with insomnia. To this day, I still have that social anxiety. God help me in an airport, like, because you don't have a choice. TSA is looking at you like, lady, what's your problem? It affects, my personal life, my dating life, like all the things. The social anxiety has just really been a symptom and an aftermath of that for me. But the reason why I brought up that one website that I really don't trust is because once in a blue moon, they would come to me with some like insider information that often would either start or fully connect certain pieces that we couldn't figure out on why this stuff was happening, who was behind it. This was earlier on in all of this competitor drama. So we were so new to it. Like now we know how to figure out who's behind something. But back then it was like, who in the world has it out for us and why? Um, Now it turns out because of my prolific commentary on the internet, I ruffled some feathers that people just decided, to make me enemy number one. But I learned as well that there were other people that I had known throughout the industry when I was a massage attendant and not yet an owner, that also had a huge issue with the fact that I kind of switched sides. I went from worker to owner. And this is when things got even scarier for me, and further dove me into the social anxiety. So this other website sent me a DM and was like, look, we know who posted your information and your identity on MT, that bad website. And we thought we'd bring it to your attention. It might be something you want to look into. We're going to basically what they gave me is a starting off point on what to look for. And it was a bunch of IP addresses on where things had been posted. So I didn't know anything about IP addresses. I'm not a tech person myself, besides knowing like what that means. I know not we all have one, but I didn't know what you do with that kind of information. So it started me not just Googling, but I had to look into finding some sort of IT guy that would be able to help me with just this code and like what do I do with this? Where do I go from here? And I found the right people. It was definitely a bit of a village that it took. There was no singular dude that was like, "Hmm." But it turned out to have a very specific location attached to it. After investigating and figuring out this IP address, it turned out it came from the Apple store at Yorkdale Mall, which is one of the biggest malls in Toronto, Canada. It's also a very hoity-toity, high-end mall. It's where all of us like to shop. And this Apple store had just kind of opened there, probably not even a year before that. I remember being really confused by that, going, what does Apple have to do with this? I remember calling you and telling you about it too, and being like, I still
Yeah.
feel like I don't know what to make of this. It was very bizarre. From there, I ended up calling the store and speaking to the store manager and kind of explaining a bit about kind of what I was seeking and pretty much explained, that there's some dangerous commentary being said about me, on the internet. It's affecting my well-being, my safety. Um, from all of this stemmed my home being broken into, my home being vandalized, um, me having to move twice because people kept posting after that where I lived. I had to change my routes of travel to and from the spa. I stopped going to some of my favorite, nightclubs or bars or hanging at like specific places where it was just constantly being outed that that's where you could find me kind of things. I was so scared and so terrified, um, that I really just had to know who was behind this. I wish I could know who was behind every asshole comment, but in theory, this one was the thing. This was the thing I was like hyper focused on that needed to find out. And so when I explained to the store manager at Apple that this was the circumstance and the IP address behind these posts comes from this store, and to write down to where they could find which specific demo computer. So this Apple manager invited me in to the store. So trek I do, go down to like Yorkdale Mall into the Apple store. The whole thing's a blur because the social anxiety was off the chain at that point. But at the same time, in contrast, I need answers to this and I'll be hellbent if I leave without them. So the generous manager allowed me to view the store footage from that day from their security camera. And lo and behold, it was three ladies from my closest circle of coworkers when I used to work. And I was probably 6 months to a year out from having retired from giving massages to owning Muse. And I didn't know that my own circle of friends didn't support what I was doing, and how, I don't know, angry, or maybe it was jealousy. I don't know what it was,
I
but they
think
were
so.
just not pleased with this circumstance. And I had to sit and watch the whole video of them of them posting all of this, uploading everything, um, literally clicking send. I see them giggling and laughing together, like, he, we just got her. This is going to be great. Post. And I was so heartbroken. I was so devastated by the betrayal. There's something about the group of girls that you work with. I mean, we see it with our own staff, right? We have staff members that are such good best friends. They end up, bridesmaids at each other's weddings and godmothers to their kids, and like so close, and such lifelong friends long after they retire. I still have friends from when I used to work. And it's almost like a fraternity. Your sisters in that team, in those experiences, and that whole lived experience. um, and the fact that they would have betrayed my friendship. We hung out socially. Same thing, was I supposed to be a bridesmaid at one of their weddings, like the whole thing. And that whole group of about 8 girls friendship just crumbled after I discovered that. It was so heartbreaking and so upsetting to see that the people that I trusted as my circle, who we had been through hell and back together, naked, literally, um, would do that to me, would put my safety at risk, would put my family at risk, and would take it to that level. And I don't really remember when I told you, like, I don't remember that call necessarily, but at the same time, I remember the next like month or so, just like same kind of like you after the newspaper, like couldn't get out of bed, you couldn't stop thinking about it, you couldn't stop crying, even though there was some people like it'll be okay. It's just not okay at that time. Nothing about it was okay.
It had to be a level of jealousy, just like that you were the one that made it out, because as great as the job can be, and like, you financially gain, to see you kind of surpass them, that she's moved on, she now owns one, why don't we own one? We're so I think there's just an element of jealousy, really. And I think over the years, I think I've taught you trust no one. Like, we just can't trust people, period. um Even if they appear as your friend, really, like, walls have to be up. And if this business has taught us anything, it's just that.
It's such a lesson I've learned from you, because I was a very naive and trusting person. And I've learned through you to pay attention to that little spidey sense in the back of your mind. The reason why I didn't trust some of those websites, the reason why I was suspicious about certain posts, that woman's intuition thing is never wrong.
Yeah.
um we just really have to fine tuning into it, because it's easy to like dull it out or just ignore it altogether. But you were always right about who not to trust. It was always an I told you so afterward. It was something along the lines of like, you have room for 5 friends, five
Yeah.
people that you trust, 5 in your circle. If anyone breaks the code, they're gone. And
Just
great, that leaves one open spot.
yeah.
But 6
And
is more than a
anything more
handful.
is just too much.
It's too many. It's too much to juggle. It's more than one hand. Don't do it. And I remember I was a social butterfly at the time. I loved all the attention online when it was positive. It was
Yeah.
it was great till it wasn't. And I was like, what are you talking about? You're so cold-hearted. Like, you need to trust people more. You need to love people more. Everybody's got good intention. I didn't want to believe that people are that spiteful or really take that much time out of their day to not just interrupt. Like, it's one thing to spark off on Instagram with a snarky comment, right? But it's another thing to be like, I'm setting aside 3 hours of my evening to plot my revenge, or to go about my takedown, or I'm gonna ha 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 at the Apple store. Like, what the fuck is that after all? Like, in hindsight, it's shocking, it's ridiculous, it's offensive. But it also led to a bit of change for public access computers,
Yeah.
because I was pissed. And I took that to Apple corporate, and then I took it to a lawyer, and I took it to a lot of places. And the reason why you can't access adult websites and porn websites, and even our website, when you're on either a public Wi-Fi or a public computer at Starbucks, Apple, at the library, is actually thanks to me.
Well done, Emily. Well done.
It is literally the reason why you don't have access, because that shit was absolutely ridiculous to be done. And I could have, if I wanted to, taken it further with Apple. I could have held them accountable. No, I didn't. I didn't have the money to pursue that kind of lawsuit. But I just wanted the whole thing to be over with. But I always giggle a little bit when I'm in line at Starbucks or something, or again in the airport, and I'm trying to look up, let's say, the schedule or some little change on our website or something, and it denies me access to the website.
You're
Like,
like, damn it, I
oh
did this.
man, I totally forget sometimes. And it's those moments, girl text, can I switch to Tuesday? And I'm like, sure, let me look. Oh, hey, wait till I get my coffee.
Yeah.
But that's literally because of me. And I think it's because those stores knew that they could be legally liable for any kind of slander, revenge porn, like all kinds of different things that could be outed on their computer systems. I mean, it makes sense. It
Well
was
done.
a wild time, right?
Well, if there has to
So
be a silver lining to the story, let that be it, right?
absolutely. That learning to only keep a handful, even that
Yeah.
seems like a lot lately. I'm like,
Yeah.
can we lose a finger?
Right?
Just four, 'cause that's just better. It's really made us closer. Like our tight circles are even tighter because of some of these things that we went through. It reaffirms some of those rules to live by. And how we kind of let somebody new in or out. There's always people out the door. We're like, ah, enough out of you.
Yeah.
Chapter closed. But all of this led to even more harassment and more drama. So I think in our next episode, we will jump in to how that led to telling my family and kind of trying to get ahead of this whole situation.
Yeah.
Ooh, that was an unload right there.
Deep breath. Should we leave it there?
I
I think
think
so.
that's a lot for people to
Yeah.
digest for a fifth episode. I mean, we can definitely go back to some of these stories and add more context and more details. Any of y'all have questions, leave them in the comments for sure. We're happy to answer anything. And we even want to do an upcoming episode with questions only, where we just
Yeah.
answer viewer questions. So follow us on all social media channels. I think anywhere we can get the DMs that we are happy to answer, we'll kind of put those aside for when we do the Q&A episode, and keep all those tucked away. So keep an eye on the DMs, Riley. All right, guys, thank you
Hi,
so much.
guys.
Like and subscribe.